There is a county in Texas where you can build a house on raw land. No permit, no inspector, no code enforcement. And when you finish, the county will respond by doing absolutely nothing. Not because they missed it, not because you snuck it past them, because that is their official, documented policy. It's on their website, in their frequently asked questions, in plain English. There is no building permit, building code, or zoning with which you must comply. The building department doesn't call because there is no building department. And when you find that out, when you actually read the county website and see it sitting there like it's totally normal, you start looking at the standard American home building process a little differently. Like, maybe it didn't have to be this complicated. Maybe the 5-week wait for an inspector to come look at your framing, and then come back 3 weeks later for the next phase, and then sign off on something that adds $1,650 to a project that's already bankrupting you? Maybe that's not some universal law of physics. Maybe it's just a choice, and some places quietly made a different one. So that's where we're going. The places that looked at building codes and said, yeah, we're good. And I want to be clear, this isn't government bad, freedom, good, whatever. Some of these counties have interesting reasons for operating this way. Some of them are just genuinely broke and couldn't hire an inspector if they tried. Some of them have been building like this for so long that a permit feels as foreign as a traffic light. All 3 of those are different stories. All 3 of them are real. Let's start with money, because that's what actually moves people. The average building permit in America costs about $1,650. That's just the permit, the piece of paper that says you're allowed to start. Then come the inspections. Then the waiting, and if you're hiring contractors who charge by the day, waiting has a price too. The National Association of Home Builders surveyed builders in 2024 and found the average cost to put up a single-family home had hit $428,215, $162 per square foot. The highest in the history of their data series, and that's the average. That's not a custom build with weird walls. How much of that is the permit and code process? Estimates vary. $15,000 on the low end. $50,000 if you're trying to build something the code wasn't written for. And that's the part most people don't think about. The code wasn't written for everything. Earthbag walls, straw bale, cob, shipping containers welded together because that's what you want and you have a specific vision for your life. In a regulated county, someone will stop you, not because your structure is unsafe, because their checklist doesn't have a box for it. In the counties we're talking about today, nobody's checking the boxes. Texas. Texas is the easiest one to explain and also, somehow, the most satisfying. In unincorporated Texas legal term for not inside a city, counties generally do not have the legal authority to require a standard residential building permit. That's not a loophole someone found on Reddit. That's the state law. The Texas Residential Construction Commission, which handled statewide code enforcement, was abolished by the Texas legislature in 2009. Replaced with a system that lets counties opt into enforcement if they feel like it. Most rural counties did not feel like it. Bell County has infrequently asked questions on their website. It says direct quote, "County government, official page. If you are building in the unincorporated areas of the county, there is no building permit, building code, or zoning with which you must comply." Then it explains the one thing you actually do have to deal with, sewage. That's it. The county's entire position is, do whatever you want with your structure, just don't poison the groundwater. Which, if you think about it, is almost a philosophically defensible place to draw the line. The groundwater belongs to everyone. Your roof pitch belongs to you. Out in West Texas Hudspeth County, Presidio, Brewster, Terrell, same deal. No active code enforcement, and land prices that feel like a spreadsheet error. $500 to $1,500 an acre. A 40-acre parcel in Hudspeth County in the $20,000 to $30,000 range total. Now $25,000 for 40 acres sounds incredible until you pull up the map and realize your nearest grocery store is 90 minutes away and closes at 6 p.m. for reasons nobody can explain. The water situation requires planning. Remote out there doesn't mean 45 minutes from a Whole Foods. It means you need to know what you're doing before you show up. But if off-grid is the actual goal, there's probably not a cheaper entry point in America. Missouri. Missouri is the most interesting case because it's the one where the absence of regulation became a destination. Missouri has 114 counties, no mandatory statewide residential building code, Local governments can adopt codes if they want. Many outside the cities never did and never revisited it. Shannon County, 0 building codes officially confirmed. Land running $4,100 to $5,200 an acre. 10 to 40 acres available in the $16,000 to $40,000 range. The only conversation you're having with the county is about your septic system. The Ozark counties, Douglas, Ozark, Shannon, Oregon County, Texas County. Yes, there is a Texas county in Missouri, which is confusing for obvious reasons. These became a hub for alternative building, straw clay, hempcrete, earthbag, cob, owner-built everything. There's a whole community of people who specifically went to rural Missouri because the code didn't exist, which meant they could build things that wouldn't survive an inspection anywhere else. Not because those structures are dangerous. Cob houses have been standing in Missouri for decades, but because an inspector who's never seen a cob wall before is going to have a hard time approving it on a Wednesday afternoon, and variance applications are their own special kind of adventure. Forum communities for alternative builders have been pointing to Missouri since at least 2010. One user summed it up: virtually all of the counties that are not urban have no zoning or code enforcement. The only thing the rural counties regulate is septic. Satisfy them on that issue and build what you want. That was 15 years ago. Still applies. Land is cheap. Missouri has no state income tax on Social Security. These things aren't coincidences. A specific kind of person figured out that Shannon County or Ozark County checked every box on their list and moved there. And then more people found out. And now there's an informal infrastructure, people teaching each other, helping each other build, passing along what works on hillside lots in the Ozarks without a single inspection ever happening. There's something almost poetic about a community that formed around an absence. Colorado. Colorado is where things get complicated, and I want to be honest about that because it's changing. The state has no statewide residential building code. Counties decide, and several decided not to bother. Delta County, Montezuma County, Mineral, Sedgwick, Baca. Delta County's unincorporated areas, no building codes, no permits required. Clean as it gets. Saguache County gets talked about constantly in alternative building circles. It's in the San Luis Valley high desert, cold winters, the kind of landscape that makes people drive 14 hours and then cry a little when they see it. No building codes, and reportedly one of the highest concentrations of off-grid and owner-built structures in the country. Earthships, rammed earth, solar everything. The community there didn't form because it was close to anything. It formed because nothing was stopping them from building. But here's the Costilla County situation, and it matters. Costilla County was on a lot of short lists. Rural, cheap, code-free. People bought land there specifically because of that. Then the county cracked down, banned camping on your own land for more than 2 weeks without demonstrating construction progress. People who had purchased raw land under one set of expectations suddenly had a completely different situation. The land didn't change. The policy did. Colorado also passed HB 22 to 1,362 inches, 2022, which was essentially state-level pressure on code-free counties to adopt regulations. Delta County and Montezuma County are still listed as no code as of current reporting, but the trend in Colorado is toward more enforcement, not less. If you're making a land decision based on current regulatory status, verify it directly with the county, not from a YouTube video, including this one. Montana. Montana is built differently, and the reason is kind of funny. Montana has statewide building codes, technically, but residential buildings with fewer than 5 units are exempt from state building permits. State electrical and plumbing permits are optional for owner builders working on their own homes. And most rural counties, Lincoln, Sanders, Mineral, Powder River, Garfield, don't have local enforcement infrastructure. Because Montana is the 4th largest state by area and has fewer than 1.1 million people, the math on hiring inspectors to cover all of that just doesn't work. So the code exists and nobody's running it. Land runs $2,000 to $5,000 per acre in the areas people are actually considering. 20 to 40 acre parcels under $50,000. The trade-off is Montana winters, which are not a vibe, they are a genuine structural consideration. Insulation in Montana isn't an aesthetic preference, it's the difference between living there and not living there. Whatever you build, you're going to want to build it correctly, with or without anyone telling you to. North Dakota. North Dakota has a statewide code, but local governments can choose whether to enforce it. Many of the rural counties chose not to. Steele, Golden Valley, Sheridan, Slope, Oliver, Logan, Towner, Burke, Dickey, Emmons. These are small, sparse counties that simply don't have the institutional setup to run a permitting system. The code is on the books, nobody's running it. Which raises a question worth sitting with. How much of American building code enforcement is actually about safety, and how much is just about whether a county can afford to staff the office? Because if the code is optional in the sense that it only operates when someone's been hired to operate it, it's not really a standard. It's a policy that well-funded counties can run and small ones can't. I don't know what to do with that observation, but it seems worth having. Arizona. Arizona has a hybrid situation that's genuinely clever. Cochise County doesn't have no codes, but it created what's been called America's most lenient owner-builder system. Option 2 of their owner-builder amendment. You pay a permit fee, you get the permit, and then you build with no inspections. The only required visit is a final one, for county records. You get the permit, which matters for insurance, for resale, for financing conversations later, but the inspections that normally come attached to it simply don't happen. You're paying for permission to be unsupervised. Greenlee County is the one Arizona county with genuinely no residential building codes at all. Very rural, not a lot of listings, but maximum freedom if that's the requirement. West Virginia. West Virginia adopted the International Building Code. All 55 counties technically did. Of those 55 counties, 10 have a code enforcement office. The other 45 will suggest you pull a permit so they can make sure you're not building in a floodplain, and then after that conversation, they're done with you. No budget for inspectors. The code passed. Nobody's running it. When a local government says we adopted the code but can't actually use it, the practical effect is very close to having no code. Not quite the same, but close enough that people building in those counties report the same basic experience. Now, the part the thumbnail didn't mention. Septic is everywhere, every state, every county. Regardless of how little anyone cares about your wall materials or ceiling height or whether your front door swings the right way, every state cares about where your sewage goes. You can build a cob house in Shannon County with no permits and nobody shows up, run waste into the wrong place and a completely different agency shows up with a completely different energy. The one universal rule, handle your sewage correctly. Everything else is negotiable depending on where you are. That one is not. Financing is a real conversation. If you want a construction loan or conventional mortgage in a no-code county, some lenders will walk. No permit means no record. No record means no documentation of what was built or how. This matters less when you're paying cash, and cash is more accessible when land costs $25,000 instead of $250,000, which is part of why the whole system works for the people it works for. But if a bank loan is part of the plan, look into this before you buy the land. The policy can change. Costilla County is the most recent example, but not the only one. The county that's never had a building inspector can hire one next fiscal year. The county whose website currently says no permits required can update that page. Buying land based on current regulatory status is reasonable. Assuming that status is permanent is not. One forum user who'd been through a sudden enforcement change put it this way: you never know when the jurisdiction will hire inspectors to do enforcement, meaning you could suddenly face hefty fines. Some were even forced to demolish their homes. It's the tail risk, not common, but real. Here's the honest version of who this actually works for. People paying cash, because the financing complication doesn't apply. People who want to use building methods that wouldn't pass inspection anywhere else, not because those methods are unsafe, but because the code wasn't written for them. People who need a genuinely low cost of entry into land ownership, because the conversation is different when 40 acres costs $25,000 instead of $250,000. And people who want to learn, who want to make mistakes on their own structure and fix them, rather than paying someone else to prevent them. Owner-builder culture in these counties is real and has been around for decades. There are communities who teach each other, build together, and figured out how to put up sound structures without a single inspection because they learned from people who did the same thing before them. It doesn't work for people who need the build bankable immediately. It doesn't work for people who need a county's endorsement that the structure is safe because the county isn't offering one. The safety is entirely yours. That's not scary if you know what you're doing. It's genuinely dangerous if you don't. The history here is weirder than people expect. Building codes in America go back to 1,625 fire safety regulations in early colonial settlements. Boston outlawed wood chimneys in 1630, the first formal building code written in the U.S. was in 1788 in Old Salem, North Carolina, in German because the community was Moravian. George Washington recommended height and area limits on wood frame buildings in his plans for the District of Columbia, though he framed it as a suggestion because that's how things worked then. The modern system is much newer. 3 regional code organizations ran different parts of the country through most of the 20th century, each with their own codes, adopted locally, enforced locally. The International Code Council wasn't formed until 1994. The first International Residential Code, the baseline document most counties now use, wasn't published until 2000. So when a county never adopted a building code, they're often not making an anarchist statement. They just predate the modern system and never had a reason to join it. Shannon County, Missouri, has never had a building code because it never went through a process of deciding to get one. The absence isn't a decision. It's just inertia, which, in this case, turns out to be really convenient if you want to build a straw bale house on 20 acres. Chicago, by the way, still runs its own proprietary municipal code, the only major American city that does. Every other city eventually adopted some version of the International Building Code. Chicago looked at the national standard, said no thank you, and kept going, which is somehow simultaneously infuriating and impressive. Classic Chicago. The counties that let you build without permission aren't lawless. They're just operating on a different idea of what county government is supposed to do. In most of them, that idea is basically, the land is yours, the structure is yours, and as long as you don't create a shared problem groundwater, floodplain, commercial operation nobody knew about, we are going to leave you alone. That's not a radical idea, that's what most of rural America ran on for most of its history. The extensive permitting system we think of as normal is newer than people realize, more optional than people assume, and geographically patchier than any map can actually show you. There are hundreds of rural counties where the process that feels mandatory and inevitable in a suburb simply doesn't exist, not because those counties are broken or behind, because they made a different call. Or never made the call at all, and either way, they're still there, with cheap land and no inspector on payroll. The window's closing. That's also true. Colorado is the clearest example, but the broader trend is toward more regulation, not less. What's code-free today may look different in 5 years. So if this matters to your plans, call the county. Ask directly, what permits do you require for residential construction in unincorporated areas? Listen to the answer. And if the answer is some version of, we don't really do permits here, you didn't find a loophole. You found a place that decided the land belongs to the person who owns it. What you do with that is up to you.